What if I told you a Canadian hockey prodigy born with skates on his feet and a dream in his heart would one day trade slap shots for smuggling marijuana across the U.S. border and become one of the biggest cannabis traffickers in North American history? What if everything he ever worked for, his shot at the NHL, his family, his future, vanished in a haze of fast money, danger, and betrayal? This isn't fiction. This is the unbelievable true story of how a rising sports star became America's most unexpected weed kingpin. And trust me, you won't see the twist coming. It all began in 1975, tucked away in the postcard town of North Vancouver, British Columbia. A place where snow-capped mountains watched over hockey rinks and every kid dreamt of making it to the big leagues. Among them was a kid named Ryan Phillips, a boy with wide eyes, raw talent, and a father who believed in him more than anything else in the world. From the moment he could walk, Ryan was chasing pucks. His dad was more than just a father. He was coach, cheerleader, and drill sergeant. Every early morning skate, every bruised knee, every loss, they faced it together. Ryan wasn't just playing hockey. He was chasing a future. At 16, he made his move, junior hockey, the golden gateway to the NHL. But the path wasn't golden for long. He joined a team where hazing wasn't tradition, it was torment. Older players bullied him relentlessly. One night they got him drunk, stripped him, and scribbled all over his body. He woke up naked, humiliated, and soaked in urine. They branded him with the word rookie. It broke something inside him, but he kept skating. Over the next 4 years, Ryan bounced between 14 different households. Alone, angry, drinking. He never told his father what had happened. He swallowed the shame and let the bottle speak for him. Then one night, the bottle led him to a bar and into the arms of fate. There he ran into Kane, an old friend with new money, flashy, confident, surrounded by hangers-on. Ryan watched him throw cash like it was confetti. Curious, he asked where the money came from. Kane asked him a question in return. "You making any money playing hockey?" Ryan laughed. "Of course not." "You want to?" That was it. Kane said he'd be in touch. He told Ryan to bring his hockey gear next time. Ryan didn't ask why. He just nodded. The next day, Kane showed up at Ryan's doorstep, all smiles and swagger. He told Ryan's mom he ran a music label. She didn't buy it, but she let him in. Kane took Ryan to a quiet apartment, shut the door, and pulled out a massive brick of marijuana. "This," Kane said, "is how I pay the bills." Ryan stared at the weed, confused. In Canada, marijuana wasn't a big deal. It was practically part of the culture. But across the border, in the U.S., that's where the real money was. "All you gotta do is take it across," Kane said. "Simple. You got the hockey bag." Kane dropped 20 pounds of weed into the bag Ryan brought. Just like that, the game changed. The plan was simple. Drive an hour and 15 minutes to the border, act like he was headed to Tacoma to play junior hockey, and smile. But the nerves were real. Halfway to the border, a patrol car tailed him. Ryan could barely breathe, but the cop turned off. Coast clear. At the crossing, the guard asked him where he was headed. "Junior hockey," Ryan said, steady as stone. The guard waved him through. He made it? Kane handed him $11,000. For a 19-year-old who'd spent years broke, bruised and broken, that money felt like a miracle. One run turned into 2, then 3. That summer, Ryan was pulling 5 figures at a time. He thought he'd made it. He had money, freedom, and for the first time in forever power. But life wasn't done with him yet. Just as the summer ended, the call came. A contract offer to play pro hockey in the States. The Wichita Thunder. It was everything Ryan had once dreamed of. He accepted. It felt like fate had offered him a second shot. Maybe he could leave the weed behind. Maybe he could be someone his dad could finally be proud of again. His first pro game was electric. A packed arena. Thousands of screaming fans. He scored a goal in minutes. The crowd erupted. Then he saw her. A woman in the stands, smiling at him like he was the only person in the world. Her name was Nicole. He was hooked. While Ryan tried to rebuild a life in hockey, Kane wasn't happy. He kept calling. Business was booming, and he needed his mule back. Ryan ignored the calls. He had a girlfriend now. He was playing again. Maybe, just maybe, he could be okay. But the bottle crept back in. Ryan started drinking. Hard, every night. Free drinks came from fans and bartenders. It got worse after practice. He'd black out. Start over. Repeat. Then Nicole told him she was pregnant. He froze. He was just 20. He could barely take care of himself, let alone a child. And hockey? It wasn't paying nearly enough. On Christmas Eve, the coach gave a clear order. No drinking before the big game. Ryan got drunk anyway. Too drunk to play. Too drunk to even show up properly. He was cut from the team. His dream was dead. Again. That night, Ryan made a decision. Call Kane. Back to the weed. Back to the cash. He told Nicole everything about the runs, the border crossings, the money. She was furious, heartbroken. She left the bar in silence, taking the baby with her. Ryan found another contact, a hockey buddy, who had a pace lane pass that let him cross the border without inspection. For $500, it was like having an invisibility cloak. Things were good again, until Kane found out. Kane confronted Ryan's friend. Guns were drawn. Threats were made. Ryan saw the real side of the business, the violence, the chaos. It wasn't just weed anymore. This was war. Ryan walked away from Kane. He knew the growers in British Columbia. He had contacts. He didn't need Kane. He decided to go solo. The next job was bigger. Over 100 pounds of weed. While packing, Nicole walked in. She saw the stash, freaked out, and took their daughter back to the U.S. She was done. Ryan begged. She didn't budge. Alone again, Ryan felt like the kid in the locker room all over again, betrayed, rejected, humiliated. So he doubled down. If he couldn't have love or hockey, he'd have money. Ryan found a hidden trail, a 12-kilometer logging road 2.5 hours from Vancouver, that led through the forest straight into the U.S. He built a crew, 4 hikers. Each would carry 25 pounds. Ryan would go with them, at least for the first run. 8 grueling hours through thick forest and rough terrain. When they reached the drop spot, their ride wasn't there. Something felt wrong. Eventually, the van arrived. But before they could leave, a sound filled the sky. A helicopter. Border Patrol. Ryan's heart stopped. They were surrounded. Forced to their knees. Cuffed. Game over. In that moment, Ryan knew he had traded everything for a few bricks of weed and the illusion of control. The hockey kid from North Vancouver, once full of promise, was now just another name in a D file. But that wasn't the end of his story. Not by a long shot. And what happens next will take you somewhere you won't expect. Now, we'll take you deeper into the prison walls, where Ryan would be tested in ways he never imagined, and where a shocking twist will change everything he thought he knew about redemption. They say prison breaks a man, but for Ryan Phillips, it was where he finally saw himself stripped of the glory, the money, the lies. Just a man staring down the cost of his choices. And it all started the moment those steel doors slammed behind him. After his arrest at the border in 2000, Ryan was hit with a federal charge, conspiracy to smuggle over 100 pounds of marijuana into the United States, a serious offense. But the authorities didn't just see a smuggler, they saw a risk, a flight risk. So instead of a low-security holding facility, Ryan was sent to a place built to crush spirits, SeaTac Federal Detention Center in Washington, a maximum security lockdown with barely a glimpse of daylight. For over 500 days, he didn't see the sun. When he arrived, the other inmates erupted in a ritual that chilled his blood. New fish, we're gonna kill you. Those words weren't just threats. They were initiation. Ryan had walked into a different kind of rink one, where the players were gang members, killers, and lifers. The Mexican Mafia, the Crips, the Bloods. Prison politics ruled everything, and outsiders were targets. He was no longer Ryan the hockey player, no longer the kid with a dream. Here he was fresh meat. He tried to stay invisible, but fear clung to him like sweat. The guards weren't any better, cold, detached. Some were cruel just for sport. One day, a guard called him to his cell. Ryan's heart dropped. He didn't know if he was about to be assaulted, stabbed, or worse. "Strip," the guard ordered. Ryan froze. "What for? You got drugs on you, don't you?" He didn't, but that didn't matter. Humiliated, Ryan removed every stitch of clothing. The guard searched him like an animal. Afterward, Ryan stood there naked, exposed, and less human than he'd ever felt. It wasn't just a search. It was a message. You don't matter here. Despite it all, someone still believed in him, his mother. She visited regularly, holding his hand through the glass, telling him he was still worth saving, that he could still turn things around. He didn't cry in front of her, but the moment the visit ended, he'd break down in his cell. That window was the only sunlight his soul had left. Back in the States, Nicole was raising their daughter, Katie, alone. Ryan had missed her birth. Missed her first steps, missed everything. He wasn't even allowed in the country anymore. All he could do was remember the promise he'd made the day she was born. "I'll always be there for you." But now, he couldn't even cross the border to see her, and she was only 2.5 years old. That guilt, it ate him alive. But something strange started happening inside prison. People began approaching him, gang members, lifers, repeat offenders. "You from BC?" they'd ask. "Yeah," Ryan would answer. "Can you get us some BC bud when you're out?" British Columbia's weed had a reputation. Strong, pure, legendary. Even in prison, Ryan's old life was chasing him. His name carried weight. They didn't see a rookie anymore, they saw a plug. He started making connections again. Prison business, deals, futures being built behind bars. But somewhere in that gray haze, something clicked. He looked around at the violence, the noise, the sadness, and he remembered who he used to be. A kid with a stick, a dream, a father who believed in him. Was this really the legacy he wanted to leave? Ryan enrolled in counseling. He joined a prison hockey team. The skates felt like home again, not just physically, but spiritually. It reminded him of who he was before the drugs, before Cain, before the lies. He began to change. And after serving 18 months, Ryan was released. But not back into freedom, not really. He was escorted out of the country in a bulletproof van, having signed documents that banned him from ever setting foot in the United States again. No appeal, no visitation, no reunions. Just cold separation from the child he swore to protect. During the ride to Canada, he stared out the window, numb. What if I never see her again? He whispered to himself. But once home, the silence hit harder than the cell walls ever did. No teammates, no Nicole, no Katie. Just a man and the weight of his past. For a while he tried. He really did. But without purpose, the old itch came back. The kind that promised easy money, fast solutions, and temporary highs. So he did what he swore he wouldn't. He went back to the game. Only this time, he wasn't a kid doing border runs. He was the boss. He'd built a new crew. Got trucks modified with hidden compartments. Boats that could sail across the border under the radar, each holding hundreds of pounds. He even linked with someone who owned a plane capable of flying 250 pounds of product into the States without raising alarms. It was empire-level smuggling now. He was making hundreds of thousands. Suitcases overflowing with cash. Coke-fueled parties, champagne, strippers, hotels, fast cars. But the bigger he got, the more dangerous the game became. He wasn't just a weed dealer anymore. He was rubbing shoulders with Russian mobs, Mexican cartels, Chinese syndicates. People who didn't talk twice before pulling the trigger. Then came the threat, a mysterious call. "You stole 70 pounds, the voice said. "You owe us $2 million. Ryan was confused. He didn't deal in cocaine, but they weren't asking, they were accusing. He was given 24 hours to pay or die. Panicked, Ryan agreed to meet them. A warehouse in Vancouver. A lie detector test was arranged. 5 questions, all yes or no. Have you been to L.E. in the last 3 weeks? Have you ever stolen anything from this gang? Have you ever sold cocaine? Do you know where the 70 kilos are? Each answer felt like defusing a bomb. One wrong twitch, one spike in the readout, and he'd be executed on the spot. Gunmen surrounded him. Safety was an illusion, but somehow Ryan passed. They let him go. That night, Ryan stood in front of his bathroom mirror. His reflection didn't lie. Pale skin, hollow eyes, cocaine dust on his collar. A man drowning. "I chose this," he said to himself. "I chose money over my daughter, drugs over my dream. Cain didn't ruin me. I did," and he broke down. He cried for who he used to be, for Nicole, for Katie, for the father he once wanted to be. He had 2 options: spiral into nothing or rise from the ashes. This time, Ryan made the right choice. He walked away from the business for good. He didn't have much left, no money, no family, no home, but he had time and a will to start over. In 2011, he launched Returned to Happiness, a nonprofit focused on helping youth avoid the mistakes he made. He started speaking at schools, shelters, and prisons. His story wasn't just a cautionary tale, it was a lifeline. But one dream still haunted him: Katie. He wanted to see her again. For 12 years, he'd been locked out of her life. Then in 2012, a miracle happened. Ryan received a humanitarian waiver. It granted him temporary access to the U.S. He crossed the border not as a smuggler, but as a father. When he saw Katie, now a teenager, his heart shattered and mended all at once. She was real, grown, brilliant. He hugged her like he would never let go. That moment, it made every fall worth climbing out of. Today, Ryan is a motivational speaker, an activist, a man who's walked through fire and now carries the torch for others. Because sometimes it's the people who fall the furthest who rise the highest. But Ryan's story isn't over yet, because just when he thought he was done with danger, fame, and temptation, life threw him one last curveball. The ending will break your heart and then stitch it back together. You'd think redemption comes with a neat bow, lessons learned, demons conquered, fade to black. But life doesn't work that way. Not for Ryan Phillips. Because just when it seemed like he'd finally escaped the grip of his past, the past came screaming back this time, louder than ever. This is the final act, and it ends not with a whisper, but with a bang. After regaining temporary access to the U.S., Ryan had only one mission: reconnect with his daughter, Katie. By now she was almost a teenager, sharp, skeptical, full of questions. He visited her quietly, humbly. No flashy gifts. No apologies drenched in excuses. Just truth. I was lost, he told her. And it wasn't your fault. She listened, didn't say much. But she didn't walk away either. That alone felt like a miracle. Ryan thought, maybe now I can breathe. Back in Vancouver, he poured everything into his nonprofit. Speaking gigs, youth outreach, prison visits, he was becoming something of a local hero, a redeemed man. A real story of second chances, but beneath the surface, danger still simmered. Because Ryan didn't just vanish from the drug world. You don't retire from that life without leaving shadows behind. And one of those shadows was watching. One night after a high school speaking engagement, Ryan returned to his apartment to find the door ajar. He paused. Inside, everything looked untouched, except for the photograph of him and Katie on the fridge. A knife was stabbed right through it. No note, no blood, just a message. They knew he was back. He tried to brush it off. Old enemies trying to scare me, he told himself, but he couldn't sleep. Every creak in the floorboard, every car door outside, it all felt like a countdown, ticking towards something terrible. A week later, the calls began. Blocked numbers. No voice, just silence. Then, finally, a message. You still owe us. Thought we forgot? Ryan hadn't touched the business in over a year. He'd buried that world, or so he thought. But someone hadn't forgotten a debt, a shipment that had gone missing during his last days in the game, a deal that went bad, a cartel that lost millions. And they wanted it back, in full. Ryan tried to plead, tried to explain he was done, that he was broke, that he was helping kids now. But drug lords don't care about TED Talks. You have 2 weeks, the voice said, or we come for her. Her, Katie. That one word detonated everything inside him. He begged them not to touch her. They hung up. He collapsed on his floor, shaking. That night, Ryan made the decision that would define the rest of his life. He would go back, just one last time. He called a former contact, someone who still owed him a favor. I need to move fast, Ryan said. I need a plane, a route, and no screw-ups. They agreed. He mapped it out. Same logging trail, same tactics. But this time it wouldn't be weed. It would be cash. Hundreds of thousands, everything he had left, bundled and sealed. He would pay the debt and vanish. That was the plan, but plans are paper, and paper burns. The night of the drop, rain slashed the mountains like knives. Ryan loaded the duffel bags himself, his fingers trembling. He wasn't the same man who once ran through these woods high on adrenaline. He was older now, slower, but more desperate than ever. He hiked the path alone, one final march toward atonement. Hours passed. He crossed into U.S. territory, hidden by darkness and trees. The drop site was an abandoned shed near the old forest trail. He waited, then headlights. A car pulled up. Not the usual type. This one looked wrong, no tags, too clean. Ryan stepped back. The window rolled down. "Ryan Phillips?" a voice asked. Not a buyer, not a thug. It was federal. It was a setup. He turned to run, but floodlights exploded from the trees. "Get on the ground," guns aimed. Helicopter blades roared overhead, dogs barking in the distance. It was over, again, but this time it was different. Because they hadn't come for the weed, they'd come for him. Ryan lay in the mud, face pressed against the ground as the agents cuffed him. One of them knelt down beside him. "You thought we weren't watching? That humanitarian visa? That was bait." Ryan blinked. "You told your story at every school, every prison, every news outlet," the agent said. "You made yourself a symbol of redemption, but you forgot something. When you become a symbol, people start looking closer." Ryan had been a walking contradiction, an ex-con telling kids to stay clean while still tied to whispers of the criminal underworld. They had been building a case for months, watching, waiting, and now they had him. In that moment, Ryan felt the weight of everything crush him. The lies, the fear, the second chance he'd just blown to pieces. He wasn't just losing his freedom. He was losing her, again, this time for good. Back in custody, the charges were heavy conspiracy, border crimes, fraud tied to his visa use. He was facing serious time. But something unexpected happened. The world rallied. Ryan's arrest made headlines, but not the kind you'd expect. News outlets, former schools, even the very teens he'd once mentored, they spoke up for him. They wrote letters, shared stories, posted videos. "He made mistakes," one student said, "but he changed my life." Another said, "He told me the truth when no one else did." Even Nicole spoke up. "He's not perfect," she told the reporter, "but he's a better man than most." The case dragged on. Eventually, Ryan took a plea deal. 18 months again. It felt like déjà vu. But this time, he didn't walk into prison ashamed. He walked in with purpose. He taught inside, built writing programs, started a podcast from behind bars, shared stories with inmates who'd never heard someone say, "You matter." And when he got out, he didn't hide. He told the truth, the whole truth, that he relapsed, that he panicked, that he tried to protect his daughter in the worst way possible. And somehow, that made people listen more. Ryan's story became a documentary, then a book, then a movement. Scars Before Stars, he called it, a way to turn pain into purpose. Today, Ryan travels the world no longer as a smuggler or a speaker, but as both, because he carries the weight of both lives every day. He doesn't run from his past. He owns it. And if you ask him what changed everything, he won't talk about the D or prison or money. He'll tell you about the night he looked in the mirror and realized He had become the villain in the story he used to tell his daughter to fear. And that was the moment he chose to rewrite the ending. So what do we take from Ryan Phillips? That anyone can fall? That good intentions don't excuse bad decisions. But also this: sometimes the loudest bang at the end of a story isn't the gunshot or the jail cell. It's the sound of a man finally waking up to who he really is and choosing, against all odds, to fight like hell for who he could still become.